First impressions and rigid expectations can often lead to a movie being unfairly hated and written off, especially if it's a sequel in a horror franchise. I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are 10 horror movie sequels that deserve a second chance. Number 10. Alien Resurrection. The first two entries in the Alien saga became bona fide classics, whereas 1993's Alien 3 was so mangled by studio interference that then fledgling filmmaker David Fincher outright disowned it. That's quite understandable given how much its bleak tone and offensive narrative choices also angered countless viewers. Clearly, it was time for another stylistic revision. And for better and worse, 1997's Alien Resurrection was the palate cleanser cinema-goers received. In hindsight, and legitimate issues notwithstanding, the fourth Alien film should at least be applauded for being so brazenly and relentlessly strange and entertaining. It's directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet and penned by the admittedly problematic Joss Whedon, and both the former's eccentricities and the latter's quippy dialogue permeate the journey. Therefore, Alien Resurrection has an alluringly idiosyncratic essence that's delightfully bewildering. Part of that appeal is due to how badass heroine Ellen Ripley returns, well, Ripley 8, that is, and subsequently behaves, with curious turns from Winona Ryder, Ron Perlman, Brad Dourif, and various other performers, enhancing what's undeniably a one-of-a-kind ensemble cast. By the end, Alien Resurrection goes entirely off the rails, and while it doesn't always succeed, it's a routinely fascinating experiment. Number 9. Sleepaway Camp 2: Unhappy Campers. The original Sleepaway Camp came out in 1983 during the height of the decade's ravenous slasher craze. Beyond its over-the-top murders and laughably dated aesthetic, it's become famous, or infamous, for its transgressive representations of gender and sexuality, as well as for its extremely disturbing twist ending. It's become so legendary that it's easy to forget about its follow-ups, and although the latter sequels are probably not worth remembering, 1988's Sleepaway Camp 2: Unhappy Campers absolutely is. In contrast to Felissa Rose's portrayal of Angela/Peter Baker as a meek and silent homicidal maniac, Pamela Springsteen's version is wonderfully snarky, deceptive, and unpredictable. She's always overjoyed to punish her campers in gleefully perverse ways, and she frequently adds insult to injury by mocking them in the process. Granted, their drastic change in personality between movies is far-fetched and incongruous to the point that they feel like a completely different person, but that could be seen as a pleasantly self-referential nod to the real change in actress. Their tonal reinvention is also present in the picture as a whole, with Sleepaway Camp 2 taking shots at the slasher genre as a whole via its lovably tongue-in-cheek satire. It's truly a great time. Number 8. Phantasm II. 1979's Phantasm is an immensely creepy and enigmatic cult horror gem that birthed one of the genre's greatest third-tier villains, the Tall Man, and one of its greatest weapons, the Sentinel Sphere. Despite its change in style, 1988's successor is in its own ways on par with the first outing. It's downright perplexing then that it still has a significantly lower critical score on both Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. Basically, Phantasm 2 is to Phantasm what Aliens is to Alien, an adrenaline-fueled adventure that injects action and campy fun into its sci-fi horror foundation. Fan-favourite hero Reggie Bannister returns with double the free-spirited vibes and renegade attitude, cracking jokes as he takes down foes with many awesome tools: a chainsaw, a flamethrower, a quadruple shotgun. Meanwhile, actor James LaGrosse turns main protagonist Mike Pearson into a more interesting and likeable character, which only strengthens his chemistry with Reggie. The film's surreal popcorn horror charm applies to various scenes too, with the Tall Man worm encounter being a highlight. In general, Phantasm 2 is what might happen if you mix the original Phantasm with the Evil Dead and Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. Number 6. Halloween 2. It would be foolish to expect any Halloween sequel to match the genre-defining genius of John Carpenter and Deborah Hill's 1978 original. Yet no other follow-up faced as much pressure to do exactly that as 1981's Rick Rosenthal-directed Halloween 2. Over the decades, Halloween 2 has become more beloved. Nevertheless, it's still underappreciated and overly criticized criticized. Primarily, it does an excellent job of retaining the continuity and atmosphere of its forerunner, so much so that the two titles could be edited together to create a single 3-hour movie. Yes, Halloween 2 adheres to the bloodiness of the booming slasher subgenre, but it still maintains the original's eeriness and subtlety. By and large, principal figures Michael Myers, Dr. Loomis, and Laurie Strode feel the same as they did before as well. Plus, there's real emotion to Sheriff Brackett's reaction to the demise of his daughter Annie following the events of Halloween. Across its runtime, the movie features some top-notch kills as well. Nurse Bailey being submerged in the therapy tub, Myers' fiery defeat. Is Halloween 2 as incredible as Halloween? Of course not. Is it a commendably faithful and fitting expansion of the Strode-Loomis-Myers saga? Without a doubt, yes. Number 5. Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday. Between 1980 and 1989, there were 8 Friday the 13th movies, which, unsurprisingly, resulted in the series quickly running out of steam. That's precisely why the maligned 9th chapter, 1993's Jason Goes to Hell: The Final Friday, should be celebrated for its willingness to shake things up significantly with its fantastical elements, ambitiously absurd narrative, and crowd-pleasing ending. Jason Goes to Hell's opening subversion is admirably clever, with viewers being fooled into thinking they're watching an innocent woman fall into Jason's path, only to learn that she's actually an FBI agent luring Jason into a trap. After he's blown up, his soul possesses various people who do his bloodthirsty bidding, as Voorhees searches for a family member to resurrect him. Sure, that goes against the core of Friday the 13th, but that core had been done to death by this point. So why not shoot for the stars with a zany and thoroughly fun premise instead? That risky foundation, alongside the film's inventive kills and wacky lead character Creighton Duke, makes Jason Goes to Hell special. Of course, its closing moment of Freddy Krueger pulling Jason's mask into hell definitely got horror lovers salivating over the two terrifying titans eventually squaring off as well. Number 4. Child's Play 3. It's no secret that 1991's Child's Play 3 was rushed into production so that Universal Studios could capitalize on the successes of the series' first 2 installments. Consequently, it's not nearly as gripping or resourceful as 1990's Child's Play 2 or 1998's Bride of Chucky. However, just because it doesn't match the series' 2 most popular entries doesn't mean it's rubbish either. The absence of Alex Vincent as Andy is reasonably contentious, but replacement Justin Whalen does well portraying an older and wiser version of the character. And on that note, Don Mancini wisely set Child's Play 3 8 years after Child's Play 2, so that both its hero and location offered a stimulating change of pace. Furthermore, it arguably contains the best one-liners from horror's favorite killer doll. While not every kill scene is exceptional, at least 2 of Chucky's least likable victims, Colonel Cochran and Sergeant Botnick, receive undeniably gratifying deaths. Obviously, Chucky's brutal demise at the carnival is as fulfilling as it is frightening as well. Child's Play 3 isn't great, but it's better than it gets credit for. Number 3. Paranormal Activity: The Marked Ones. As with a few other titles being discussed here, the 5th Paranormal Activity film, 2014's The Marked Ones, had the misfortune of arriving shortly after the series' low point, 2012's Paranormal Activity 4. In fact, The Marked Ones ended up being sandwiched between the franchise's 2 worst installments, as the Ghost Dimension arrived a year later. Despite not being revolutionary or remarkable, the movie is markedly better than the full-length features that surround it, if not better than 1 or 2 other sequels, and it deserves to be championed for everything it nails. By retaining some requisite elements, namely possession and witchcraft, while shifting the focus to a new culture, a Latino community within the series' consistent California locale, The Marked Ones is inherently refreshing and intriguing. Protagonist Jesse's superhuman abilities, such as levitation and telekinesis, add flavor to the tired tropes too, and virtually all the leads are compelling. However needlessly complicated, the movie's mysteries are unexpectedly captivating, just as its final twists and connections to the past are laudably clever. Admittedly, The Marked Ones is mostly just another Paranormal Activity affair, but its absorbing tale, exciting nuances, and unique revisions of the formula give it several extra points. Number 2. Hellraiser 3: Hell on Earth. 1987's Hellraiser and 1988's increasingly cerebral Hellbound Hellraiser 2 were bolstered by British Gothic macabre aesthetics, psychosexual transgressiveness, and the creative involvement of original story writer Clive Barker. In contrast, 1992's commonly disparaged Hellraiser 3: Hell on Earth leaned into the cheesiness and edginess of 90s popular culture, replacing its predecessor's literary tone, pacing, and depth with a superficially flashy action slasher vibe. vibe. In other words, it's the MTV generation Hellraiser movie, and it's all the better for it. Hell on Earth's popcorn flick charm largely derives from the ruthlessness and ridiculousness of the Cenobites. Primarily, Pinhead kills freely with slick catchphrases rather than selective and romanticized justifications, leading to at least two of the franchise's most pleasingly gratuitous death scenes, the skinning of Sandy and the nightclub massacre. The Hell Priest's new lackeys are lovably absurd too, since most of them are fused with bizarre technologies such as CDs, cameras, and car pistons. Of course, they punish their victims in enjoyably ludicrous and explosive ways as well. Hellraiser 3 also dives deeper into Pinhead's backstory as Elliot Spencer, placing interesting and substantive lore beneath its fun surface-level sleaziness. Thus, Hell on Earth is a total blast when viewed in the proper context. Number 1. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. By the end of the 1980s, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise had fully sacrificed scariness for imaginative silliness. That's why the goofiness of 1991's Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare fell perfectly in line with where 1989's A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child left off. Like 2004's Seed of Chucky, the movie is frequently reviled for completely undermining its serious and terrifying roots with a cartoonish tone that turned its iconic villain into a wisecracking imitation of his formerly frightening self. Every criticism fans and horror aficionados make against Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare is valid, including its bland finale. Yet there's more depth beneath the surface that deserves applause. In keeping with the series' ongoing subtext regarding psychological, emotional harm and parental abandonment, each main character embodies a realistic need to persevere over trauma. Seriously, look at how Tracy's transformed by her father's sexual abuse, how Spencer uses drugs to cope with not measuring up to his father's lofty standards, or even how Maggie was so scarred by her childhood that she forgot who she was, Freddy's daughter. Beneath all its slapstick, Freddy's Dead examines several profound themes. Oh, and it's actually quite amusing and creative too.